Good evening and welcome to Take Two. I'm here with my friend and yours, Brian.
Hello, Samuel.
Want to let you guys know that this Friday, right in this space at the Genesis building, we are having the paint class. If you would like to attend, they're still opening, right?
There is. I think we'll probably cap it like at what the max is here, which is probably like 20 to be spaced properly.
Mm-hmm.
So we probably have like 5 spaces left.
Okay, so you got that, about 5 spaces left. Let me move this towards you a little bit. So if you're interested, it costs $20. I know Karina and I are coming. Hopefully you guys can come and be here as well.
I'll be there.
Brian will be there. We're still dancing around this whole issue of COVID. We've been dancing for a year and a half plus. So we're still dancing. I encourage you to get vaccinated if you haven't been vaccinated, because that is, from what I understand, the best way to make sure you don't have serious complications. Doesn't mean you can't get COVID, but usually keeps you from the hospital and keeps you from dying. So those are good reasons. But anyway, we're trying to do what we can to care for everybody, and that's one of the ways you can help care for yourself. We're not requiring masks. I know a lot of places don't require masks. They suggest if you are fully vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask. We're not going to card you, but we just throw that out there so that you will take care of yourself. Anyway, let's get past that and let's move on. Last Sunday, I continued our series on the politics of Jesus.
Is this the last episode?
Oh no, I've got a bunch.
Oh, I thought you said next Sunday you're doing the last. Oh, it's part of it.
It's part
Okay,
of it.
cool.
It's part of the politics of Jesus. Yeah, the politics of Jesus kind of covers everything. Because next
here
week
for it.
we're going to be dealing really with some kind of the politics of Jesus, dealing with people who are not heard and people who are marginalized and treated like a commodity a little bit. So, but I don't want to give too much away because I don't know too much yet. I'm still figuring it all out. But yeah, we're gonna be doing this for a while here. I don't know when we'll stop when I start feeling like everyone's tired, kind of like the Grace and Truth Matrix.
Yeah.
I was like into it. Some people were like, "Yeah, when are we gonna be over with this?" Like, what do you mean? This is amazing. Yeah, we're done with this like 3 weeks ago. So we'll see. Anyway, last week we were talking about anger and how anger shows up, and there's different ways that anger is displayed. But anger in the passage, and I want to read the passage again just so as we start, kind of have the foundation of what we're talking about. It's found in Matthew chapter 5, verses 21 through 26. It says, "You have heard that it was said to those of old, 'You shall not murder, and whoever murders will be liable to judgment.' But I say to you that everyone who is angry with his brother will be liable to judgment. Whoever insults his brother will be liable to the council, and whoever says, 'You fool,' will be liable to the hell of fire. So, if you are offering your gift at the altar and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there before the altar and go. First be reconciled to your brother and then come and offer your gift. Come to terms quickly with your accuser while you are going with him to court, lest your accuser hand you over to the judge and the judge to the guard, and you be put in prison. Truly I say to you, you will never get out until you have paid the last penny." So those are the words of Jesus. Thank you. Good night. Again, we are understanding that Jesus in his time is talking to people who understood how the religious system looked at this idea of commandments and laws, where they divided them up into heavy ones, important ones, and light ones. Last time we talked about murder being, or what did we talk about last time?
Yeah, murder being heavy.
Murder being heavy, and then
Anger being
anger. Well, that's this time.
Oh, okay. Although
Yeah.
the one before.
Yeah, the one before we talked about. Gosh, now I don't
Yeah,
even
no, I
know.
forgot.
Anyway, there was this comparison, hey Kirk, about how it is the heavy ones that are important, and then the light ones, how they're not so important. But Jesus is tying them together and helping us to see that they really are important, all of them. And here we deal with murder, that's obviously a heavyweight, right? And then anger, he puts into not equality with, but he ties it to this idea of murder. And before I just keep talking, let me throw it at you, Brian, and because you gave it a listen, and let me get your feedback on this.
Well, off the bat, the verse kind of sounds like I wasn't there when Jesus said these things, but I also felt like it sounded like he said, "You'll be judged for murder," and it's almost like whoever he was talking to was really concerned with being judged, because then he also said, "But you'll also be judged for these things," and then it was like, because if there was no weight in being judged, then there wouldn't be any sense in saying the other things that you'd be judged for. So it almost sounds like you're right. He didn't put it in the same playing field, but he also made it clear there are other things that, just in case you were one of these folks that wanted to like play the semantic game and say like, well, I'm not sinning like that. I'm not a murderer like that. Then I should still. That it sounds really familiar, like it sounds like something we do now, but it feels like when you see somebody doing something awful, you're like, at least I'm not sinning like that. And then it puts you in a place where maybe you might start feeling better about yourself. And Jesus is like, no, we're going to talk about the full spectrum of the root of where murder comes from. And then you kind of touched on that a little bit, like what the root of what anger turns into. Right. And I think that was beautiful. Like you kind of, when you can start taking something that everybody knows to be dangerous and then like finding the root all the way back to lust or anger or these little, the low grade, whatever.
The lightweights, that connect to those dots. It is something that Jesus is doing. And I just looked up in the scripture and remembered what I spoke about last week. Because it's important. He's saying he didn't come to abolish.
Yeah.
Right? But he came to fulfill. And the whole idea of fulfillment is to help us understand correctly and to live into it. And so the idea of abolishing the law, we think of it as getting rid of it, but Jesus thinks of abolishing as making light of it and not taking it seriously. And that's why he compares this, right? I think it's interesting. I didn't even notice this until just now when I was reading it, that it seems like the judgment gets worse. Right? Yeah. Murder, you go before the council, you call someone a fool, the gates of hell, right? It's like, what?
Whoa. Yeah. I noticed that too, yeah.
And so it's kind of like, what's going on? But this is, again, part of the hyperbole, right? When someone is trying to use exaggerated language to give insight into how important this is, and that's what Jesus is doing here. So it's not that this one is worse and you get worse judgment. He's just bringing it to this level. You don't know how severe this is. This is a really important part. And at this time, you remember last time he talked about our righteousness exceeding that of the Pharisees, the religious people. And so those are the people, like you were saying, who would say, oh, I don't murder, right? But these people, they're just, and he's mad. We're mad at the Romans. We're mad at the, Essenes. We're mad at, all these different groups and sects. But, sorry about that. I got to turn my ring off. All these other sects and stuff that cause problems put themselves in a more righteous place, right? And I think that goes back to kind of what you were saying. We have a way of justifying what we do when we compare it. Sin always looks worse on someone else than it does on us.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that's terrible. They couldn't do that. I could do the same thing, and I've got justification. Well, I was tired. I was, hurt. I was whatever. And Jesus is, again, trying to get past all the excuses and get to what's important here.
Right. And I love that, like, while digging, you're able to, you should be able to find like your place in the circle of murder, like, because like, he just gives like the full spectrum. Like this is part of it. You're killing people with uh, how you treat them. You know, like it's the beginning of the murder. You know, uh, you're just playing, and like you said, there's something very intentional about murder. It wasn't an accidental murder. It wasn't
Yeah.
a you bumped into him and he fell off the cliff kind of thing. It was like you premeditated it,
Hmm.
and just like premeditated murder, you um, have to think about these things. You know, like you would
Yeah.
have to call someone a fool. You would have to, like you know, whether or not it came out too prematurely, it was still premeditated. You still had to think about it. Still had to travel through your body to make it out. You know, like
Yeah.
the anger still manifests,
Yeah.
and it's still intentional. Though we might regret it, and like your story later in the sermon, it doesn't matter. It's your premeditation led to the act, and what he's saying is all of it just leads to death. And it's like we could, if we recognize it sooner,
Hmm.
it's all like pre-warning signs to like how to live more abundantly, how to live more free,
Yeah.
how to. I think that's what he came to do. Is like we have some like pretty natural reactions to things, and he's like those all natural reactions will lead you to death. I'm asking you to turn
Hmm.
the natural reactions into like supernatural,
Hmm.
extraordinary. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm breaking that. You know, like that's what I'm trying to.
Yeah. And there is kind of this, I don't know if it's survival instinct, but it's definitely a self-centered focus, right? When anger takes place, it really kind of comes from this place of pride
Yeah.
to some degree. You hurt me, you did this to me, and it's from that place that these things develop. And so
Yeah.
he's definitely bringing that to the forefront here, where all these people, and remember the people he's talking to those who are, diseased, and those who are, outcasts. I mean, there's just the whole, and really it's the poor in spirit, the meek, the those who are hungry and thirsting for righteousness. This is how he's addressing this group of people, trying to cultivate what's good in them. He expects us to do these things, right? He expects us to get angry. He knows we are, and then, like you said, he's wanting to help us not give into that, but to see it differently, right? To see the kingdom politic is different than the world politic that is just giving in to that nature, right? Just
Right.
going along with how you feel, that self, determination, that, primal thing, like I'll get you before you get me kind of a attitude. And I think that it takes a lot sometimes for us to be able to even see that, at
Yeah.
least me. When I'm in the middle of it, all I see is I'm right. That's all I see. I mean, and this week I felt like or that last week, I just really felt like there were so many things that happened that triggered me where I went to that place more than usual. I mean, it happens, but not like it did that week. And I hardly ever respond to anyone on Instagram. I read so much junk that I think, that's awful, and I just like, whatever. But why did I respond this week? Right? It wasn't because I thought I need an illustration not to make myself look bad. It's like,
Yeah.
no, I did, and it happens. And I was so indignant and self-righteous when I wrote it, um, and
Yeah,
that's how it
that's a
happens.
pretty good segue into the how. Like I think part of that last calling people fools situation is the how, you know, because like you gave a lot of cool examples about how Jesus would have been passionate or even
Hmm.
angry in different scenarios,
Hmm.
but the how and the the intention behind where the passion is directed, I think has something to do with the outcome and how it's seen, you know. And I think,
Yeah.
um, yeah, could you break it down for the people that didn't listen, like how you could, how Jesus used anger, or how was it different than what he was speaking about, you know?
Yeah, yeah, because there are times where Jesus was definitely angry. There's times when he called the Pharisees, names. You think, well, you just said don't call them fool, but you called them whitewashed tombs. You called them, serpents, and you said all kinds of things against them. But the times that we see Jesus angry, and there's three, And then 4 is kind of thought in the cleansing of the temple, because it sure seemed like he was angry. But 1 is when the man had a withered hand and they were testing to see if he would heal on the Sabbath. And when he asked him, is it good, is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath? And they were quiet, and it says that he was angry. They wouldn't answer because they knew the answer. They didn't care about what was right. They wanted to stop what was good in that sense, right? So we see one sense of anger is wanting to hinder something that is good. The other is when the disciples were stopping the children from coming to him. And it said that he was indignant and said, don't stop the children from coming to me, because the kingdom belongs to them, right? And then the third one was at Lazarus's tomb when they were mourning and he saw unbelief, and it said he was indignant at that. So there was those 3 times, and kind of summing it up, Jesus angry in these areas, and what his anger did was it brought healing, it brought welcoming or an invitation, and it brought life. Right? And if you've got the temple, cleansing the temple, what he's doing is he's, because it says that the zeal burned, the zeal of the temple, he quotes that scripture where the zeal consumed me. If he's angry there, and it seems like he is, then what he did is he condemned the practices of the temple and he replaced them with his own sacrifice. So that's how Jesus responded to anger. Healed, brought life, brought community, and sacrifice.
Do you have any? I'm trying, because off the bat, I'm trying to think about if there's any examples in my life where, in my anger or my passion, had brought those things to a scenario. Can you think of any part in your life where you responded in a type of anger that brought life or healing?
Well, I kind of concluded with the one with Kareen's dad, right? Where I have so much respect for him, and he is a follower of Christ, a believer, but he comes from a tradition that I have a lot of disagreements about, and I feel close enough to him where I can talk to him, but when he says something that I disagree with, my intention isn't, I'm going to prove you wrong. My intention is, how can I help you to see things maybe differently? How can I bring insight to you? And I know I can't bring insight by bringing attitude, right? I'm not going to bring insight to him by, just blasting him with scriptures and these things. I have to do it by first respecting him, loving him, caring for him. And in that attitude, you see a difference, in the way you converse with somebody. So that we've had some amazing conversations, things that he has, thanked me for in the past. And it helps me to check myself. And because I care for him and respect him, and they've been so good to us, I would hate to do anything that came across, as indignant and upset. And so that's one way that I see that. And I was actually thinking about that today with this other incident in Instagram that I responded to. It's like, okay, what could I have done, right, that would have brought healing or would have brought... And I think the first thing would have been, hey, how are you? Right? The first thing would have been welcoming the children to come to me. It's like, hey, man, how you been? Haven't talked to you in a while. Are you guys good? The family good? Everyone doing well? I think I could have really cared about him instead of just what I thought was, a response that I didn't like. And so I think maybe that's a step that we could take when something hits us.
For sure.
And we want to strike it. It's like, okay, how do I bring healing here? What does this person really need, right? Because they don't need my, snarkiness. How can I bring life to them? How can I bring, this idea of, welcoming to them? How can I bring sacrifice of myself to them?
Yeah, and that's like inviting love into the picture. You know, like we're constantly like me and Jordan. I think we're talking the other day, and we were talking about like the whole God is love concept and how he felt it might be too small, to put God in a scenario where we say he is something like love,
Mm-hmm.
in essence, like God is our, the closest we could even get to God is like our highest reality, and
Mm-hmm.
that's still bigger than love. That's what Jordan's thinking was. Jordan's like
Mm-hmm.
conceptual, and so I said, well, then what if then our concept of love just is too
Too
small?
small,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And so, like in this sense, like what if love is um, the thing that's just waiting for us to step into constantly, like God is love, uh, and if God is everywhere and God is present in everything, and even in your angry message, and even he was uh, on the other side of the receiving message. Like if we could step into like the love part of it, we would be able to change the reaction faster, and the
Mm-hmm.
anger part would still be there, or the disagreement could still exist, but like the love part could change the response could change,
Yeah.
in that moment could change everything, and it sounds really
Yeah.
like, if you're not like, it can sound kind of hippy dippy, but in a sense, if we talk about anger, we have to talk about the things that combat it, and God is that thing. Jesus is inviting God into the conversation,
Mm-hmm.
and also breaking down what you thought was anger and murder to begin with. Like
Yeah.
he's
Yeah. Bringing out the importance of the root and those things. Yeah. I mean, it seems so easy on
yeah,
surface,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
It
yeah.
seems like, yeah, that's what you just gotta love.
Yeah, just love
Yeah,
them
just love
hard.
them. Yeah,
Yeah.
but putting it to practice it's the, and I'm wondering why that is. Why is it? And the only thing I can conclude is pride, right? The only reason I get blinded by the anger and can't see how to step into the conversation in a better way is because I'm taking it personal and feeling it's an attack on me personally, and I need to defend myself.
Well, let's say it was. Let's say it wasn't that scenario, but let's say it directly is.
Yeah.
I think still opening your idea and finding new tools in your toolbox of ways to love, like, because we like make love really small,
Yeah.
but love is also boundaries. Love is also like
Yeah.
moving, like you said, to your father-in-law, like moving towards a healthier route. If you're dealing with anything, if you open up your idea of the different things love could be in that scenario, I
Mm-hmm.
think you could come up with something way different than what we normally come up with. This is normally like
Yeah.
punching someone in the face or having a snarky comment or
Yeah.
flipping someone off in the freeway. If you could open it up, like even if it's turning away, that's love,
Yeah.
like in a sense, like
Well,
yeah,
and that kind of brings back to what Jesus did, right? I mean, Jesus, in what did he do in response to the temple and what they were doing? Is he changed it by offering himself, right? He
yeah,
offered himself, and that's what Peter tells us in First Peter. It says that when he was reviled, he did not revile in return, right? So when he was attacked, he didn't attack in return,
yeah,
right? Which is my tendency. He did not revile in return. When he suffered, he did not threaten, but continued entrusting himself to him who judges justly, right? So that's what Jesus did, right? So that's what anger should turn into, because he very well could have been angry with the people who were, insulting him and reviling him and threatening him and crucifying him. But he entrusted himself to God. And that's where, again, pride interrupts that and, in a sense, makes us God, right? I mean, it makes us the center of what needs to be defended, right? And Jesus didn't feel he had to defend himself, right? It's like, come on, this is Jesus. And anyone has the right to, it would be him, but he didn't feel that he had to. And it's almost like where pride is I think C.S. Lewis said, pride is the sin from where all sins come, right? It is pride that made the devil, those kinds of things. It is the root of all these things. And when it shows up in our lives, that's when we feel that we have the right to react this way,
yeah,
right? And Jesus, even when it was personal, didn't, right? Which is pretty mind-blowing,
yeah, yeah.
to take that insult and say, yeah, I'm going to trust God. It's it's not something I need to deal with in that way, um, which is difficult, you know. And the two ways that Jesus talks about dealing with it is reconciliation, right? So it's almost like being reconciled with someone is as important as anything else.
And that requires a conflict sometimes. That requires
Yeah.
heavy lifting on both parts, sacrifice, communication.
Yeah, it's not just
Yeah.
like, oh, I just want to be reconciled, so I'm going to take everything you say and I'll ignore everything I feels right, right?
No.
That's not reconciliation. And so reconciliation means I'm going to labor to connect to you even through this disagreement,
Right.
right? Gosh, couldn't we use that right now, right? Couldn't we
Yeah.
use that in our country, um, and all the things that are happening right now? There's so much horrific things and horrible things in the world. I mean, uh, what's happening in Afghanistan, Haiti, what happens in our country, through injustice towards people, abuse of children. There is so much evil, and to bring about good in all these situations is going to require reconciliation, even with people who are on the other side of the aisle, on the other side of how we see things, and it doesn't mean we have to accept evil or say it's not evil or deal with it. But to get change about, we have to bring about this idea of we have to reconcile the differences between you and I have to care about enough to try and do it. Um, and this is where I think the whole politics of Jesus seems far fetched to us, right? You can't, reconcile with a terrorist. You can't reconcile with, and some people say Democrat or Republican. You can't reconcile. They're just stuck in their ways or whatever. You can't reconcile with a bigot, or you can't reconcile with this. The politics of Jesus says, well, I'm going to do everything to make it happen, including die. Right? That's the politics of Jesus. The politics of Jesus doesn't build a wall, doesn't bring up the guns, it doesn't pass the laws to outlaw these people. The politics of Jesus leans into it with healing, with life, and sacrifice. And sometimes it's just we're so repulsed that we don't want to.
Yeah.
And again, we see things from our point of view. Some other people see things from their point of view. There are people in other countries who look at us and think we are evil, right? And just like there are people in this country who look at other people and think they're evil. How do we bridge that gap? And I think it takes the politics of Jesus to do it. And I think it has to be done. I think the idea of being a peacemaker, it was including these situations,
Yeah.
right? I mean, we're talking about Rome and what they did. And I would suggest they're as bad as just about anybody and what they did in history. And he's still talking like this. And because we're so removed from this, because it seems so far-fetched, it just shows us how far we are from God in these areas.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it's a little humbling and a little scary. So when I think about that, I just think, oh man, I think I'm really far, because this seems like, yeah, there's no way. There's just no way. That's hopeless. That's hopeless. You can't do that. And the politics of Jesus says, you don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
And it's almost like you do have to read and talk like this through the scenarios of the scripture, because if you just read the piece, or you caught a meme, or someone gave you a snippet, the minute version on Instagram,
Yeah.
and you took that and ran with it, it could come off wrong, and it's like this part, this breaking it down, this dissecting, this growing together, this taking a part of it is like what what we're missing too, you know. And I think Jesus was highly invested in this part, the relational part. The only reason you could speak to your father-in-law is because you know him. The only way that like anger could turn into reconciliation is through time spent. I think there's like there's no Twitter, you know, there's no 250 characters or whatever that's
Yeah.
going to like to reconcile two people or a conversation. And like you said, it doesn't need to be where you guys are the same side or the same
Yeah.
ideals by the end of this, but there has to be a whole uh, attempt in trying to reconcile at least the relationship part. I
Yeah.
think that's where God is.
And I know a lot of people like me oftentimes, go to extremes. I mean, there's just the reconcile of, our country and the people in our country, whether it be Democrat and Republican and others, the reconciliation of races and the problems that we're dealing with racial, uh, you know, tension in our country. And we see this, and then you throw, yeah, but what about, the Taliban? And what about, uh, Korea? And what about, and there's some evil things happening in these places. And we just say, okay, but that's different, right? That's a different scenario. And that's why I mentioned that story of that guy, Daryl Davis, right? Who was a black man playing blues piano, and a Ku Klux Klan came up to him and said, "Man, you play good for a black guy." And he compared him to Jerry Lee Lewis, and then he said, "No, Jerry Lee Lewis took that from Fats Domino and others," and that friendship led him to handing in and giving up his card as a member of the Ku Klux Klan, and he gave Daryl his robe and said, I can't be this anymore because I know you aren't who they said you were, right? And then because of this friendship that he's made, there's 200 Ku Klux Klan members who've given this man their robes, right? Which is amazing, right?
Yeah, and there's that part. There's like when you get that paradox shift when you're like, oh, they're not who I thought they were. But then there's that other, like there's, made me think of that Dave Chappelle skit where he is a blind, he's a blind Ku Klux Klan member. Obviously, Dave Chappelle's black, and so the whole time he thought he was white, and they know he's blind, so they go along with it. But there's that moment where he realizes he's black. Someone tells him he's black, and there's that part where you realize that you're not who you thought you were.
Yeah.
Where where you're not who God, you're not who living who God created you to be.
Mm-hmm.
That paradox is more powerful than seeing somebody else, not how somebody else explained them, because
Yeah.
like that.
Because this guy Daryl could have easily seen this guy as Ku Klux Klan and had a conception that he can never befriend this guy.
Right.
He could never deal with that, and so he had to deal. And I don't know. I mean, it was a short podcast that I heard about him, but he had to make that shift too, right? And that's where we have to kind of see: am I so angry that I can't make a shift?
Mm-hmm.
Am I so angry that I'm not able to do this because you're just a fool, you're just an idiot, you're just, blah, blah, blah. And we'll name that, and we'll just, throw all our facts in the bowl and mix it up and say, okay, that's it. I settled it. I baked this cake, and that's how it is. Or are we willing to say, maybe you're not that, maybe I need to see the situation different. Or maybe the reason you're this way is because of what you've heard, like this guy.
Yeah.
And maybe if I can help you see that I'm different, you will change. But it's not easy, and it's not something that's simple. And you look at the extreme situations, and people are dying, and people's lives are in jeopardy, and it's not an easy fix. And you can't just say, "Oh, love's going to do everything good."
Right.
But the idea of reconciliation and befriending was how Jesus did it.
Yeah.
And some people did. There's Nicodemus who, came around. There's the other Pharisees who didn't.
And I think that's what I'm trying to say about love, and about how we say it's not always that simple, because we still think love is hugging them or something,
Yeah.
or we still think love is peaceful,
Yeah.
when we open up our thought to if God is love, then Jesus is a representation of love in all ways. So like crucifixion was love, the sacrifice was love, the bleeding was love. You know, like
Cleansing the
the
temple
cleansing the
was
temple was
love.
love.
The
Like
rebuking the
right.
disciples was
So we
love.
think
Yeah.
like, oh, like love can't fix it, but yes, it can. It's just not always what. We're not supposed to just keep on hugging everybody. That we're not. We put Care Bear love on everything because that's how we like grew up knowing love.
Yeah.
And God's like, along with all these other things I'm trying to change your mind with, like I'm also love. Like I'm and you know
Yeah, it covers a lot more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's like
No, I mean that's an important part of this, and it's interesting too because he nuances this thing, right, where the reconciliation is now my responsibility, even if they did something wrong,
right.
right?
Yeah.
It's my responsibility, you know, where if your brother has something against you, leave your offering at the altar,
That's good.
right?
Yeah.
And then go. And again, the altar was 80 miles away.
Turn
Right.
turn the other cheek. Walk the mic.
Exactly. You know, hey,
As you.
do this because this looks like the politics of Jesus, and this is the way to reconciliation.
He's concerned with the response, not the action. You know, because if we both responded correctly, then reconciliation could start. You know.
Yeah. And I mean, and think about it. I mean, so many times, and even just the smaller, again, dynamics of relationships, like with my wife, if I would humble myself, say I'm sorry, if I would try to see things from her perspective instead of hold tight to mine, then reconciliation can begin.
Right.
Right? If I know she's upset with me, instead of trying to prove why I was right, go to her and say, listen, what can I do to help us in this situation? You know, because I want us to be good. I care more about us than me being right. Right? And so how can I step into this? And we can do that in you know, micro levels, and we can do it in macro levels, I think. And so I think this is part of what Jesus is dealing with that anger, is helping us to get past the anger that doesn't want to reconcile, that just wants to win, that starts to alienate instead of bringing close, right? Because that's what anger will do. If I'm angry, I want to keep someone away. I want to hurt. I want to, and then it leads to the murder, right? You hurt me, I'll hurt you, kind of thing. You hear someone who hurt you, something bad happens to them, and you feel good that something bad happened to someone. Think about that, right? Where am I if I feel good that something bad happened, right? It's like, okay, where am I now? Because it doesn't look like Jesus. It doesn't look like a healthy place. It looks like I'm going into hell.
Dark
Like,
place.
yeah, that Jesus talks about, you know, then you're in judgment of hell. Look at what's going on with you. Where are you? And I think that's why Jesus is using this language, right? He's trying to show us how serious it is, and by comparison, where it is from who God is.
Yeah. That's good. I like that a lot. Yeah. It's a lot.
It is, man. And again, it's like, yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
But
It's big.
I don't
It's
do
big.
it.
Yeah, it's
Darn
super
it.
big.
Yeah. It's one of those things where I just feel that knee-jerk response. Even today, someone cut me off on the freeway, because I'm on the freeway a lot. And without thinking about it, I said, idiot. You know, I just said idiot. And I wasn't real mad at it. I just like, idiot. And then I just, what did you just say, Sunday? It's like, oh, man. It's like, where am I? What's going on? How could I just so quickly do that after everything? And it's just, you know, it's one of those things like, I'm sorry. Because I've cut plenty of people off.
Right.
You know?
I forgot who was. I don't know if this was again Jordan. Somebody was telling me we're in the car and they had this thing where they, every time somebody did them wrong or cut them off, they would call them like a cousin or uncle or something, and it would help them would help them change their
Reframe
response.
the whole thing, yeah.
Yeah, like that was like my family member that did it. Like they'd be like, all right, Uncle John or something like that. Like or like he would. I forgot who said that, but I think it's a good start. You know, I mean, a reconciling tool. But overall, I think what a lot of Jesus is teaching when giving these like nuanced statements is for our response. Like he's really, really um, concerned with our intention and how we react. You know, I think there's like so many situations where I think Jesus is talking and he's like, you can't control everything.
Yeah.
You know, there's not many things you can control, but you can control your reaction. And this is what I'm concerned with, that the anger is turning into murder, you know, that the looking is turning into lusting, that's turning into adultery, that the you know, like it's he's like, your reaction is what's actually leading to the sin, you know, like
Yeah.
if you could control the reaction, then it could change the course of your momentum, you know, and shift it to whatever love looks like in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's like the underarching theme with the nuance teaching, because so many of us are like, oh, it's talking about murder, cool. I'm not in that boat, you know, like,
Yeah.
well, yeah, let's like, yeah, like that's what he's doing there, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it's so interesting how we just blow off the other, but you know, you're angry. Oh yeah, should get mad, you know, but we don't really fix it.
Right.
You know, we don't really change. We just said, oh yeah, that's bad. Don't get mad and kill people. Yeah, or something like that, you know. It's like,
Right. That I can hear a lot of people say that, like,
Yeah.
I get it. I got it. Don't
Yeah.
don't get mad. Don't kill. You know, you're like, whoa, hold on, because it's not for the other person. You know, like
Yeah.
this is for you. This is because I want you to live more abundantly, and you getting mad is now congesting your life with. And not being able to free up for the thing I created you to be.
Yeah.
You know, so I think it's like when Jesus is teaching, we think, all right, he's teaching me how to like relate and how to like be a better person. And Jesus is like, no, you are so congested with like your own feelings because you haven't dealt with like so much that I'm going to give you some freedom. I'm going to give
Yeah.
you some, and the freedom is in your response, you know, like,
yeah.
so it's,
I mean, the whole Grace and Truth series that I did, this is really it in play.
yeah, it's
Right?
cool.
This is really it coming in life and putting shoes on it and dealing with these things, because this is what it looks like. You know, it works, it digs, it you know, detects things, and it responds in ways that brings about life and healing. And the opposite, like you were saying, it's like, this is for you, because what happens is when you are given to the anger, you don't see. You're blind to the kingdom, right? You're your own kingdom, and that's blind to what's really happening. And that's why that, you know, research of victimization, every group thinks they're a victim. And when I heard that, I thought, yeah, everyone I know who's a part of any group thinks they're being victimized, right? People who are in the church, oh, we're being under attack, you know. There's no more prayer in schools, and they go on, they list all these things, and then you talk to a person who's a Muslim, oh, we're under attack, we're being, you know, lumped in with the Taliban, we're being brought into this. You talk to, you know, people who are rich, we're being attacked, you know, because everyone's trying to take stuff away from us just because we're rich. You got people who are poor. It's like, we're under attack because, you know, it doesn't matter what the group is, they're under attack. And it's kind of like, is everyone under attack? Or is everyone just seeing it from that victimization, so they're unable to see anything besides that, right? And I think anger works the same way. I'm unable to see anything but this anger that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And that's now what's going to determine my action, is this anger, you know? And that's the danger, because, again, that's where murder comes from.
Right.
You know?
And like you said, it's not that those things don't exist that are making them feel like victims, because there's a reason they're feeling like that.
Yeah.
But if your victimization is keeping you from empathizing with somebody else, especially that's in direct conflict with
yeah.
your like victimizing, like
Yeah.
you think they're the oppressor, then you're automatically, you know,
going to show hostility.
Yeah. So
Yeah, and exactly. It doesn't mean there isn't injustice. It doesn't mean you're not being a victim.
Right.
Because I still think I was right in, my, response as far as information to this person, but I was totally wrong in how I did it. I was totally wrong as far as it not bringing about healing, not bringing about life or befriending the situation. That's fine, but how can I now hear him? How can I see her and where they're at? How can I now listen, to my father-in-law differently? How can I now respect and do something that brings about the life in this dynamic of the
Yeah.
relationship?
The doing part's an important part.
Yeah. And so it does, again, fall back on you go and reconcile, right? You settle matters quickly before you go to the judge. And that idea of settling matters, you make friends with them. Because it's hard to take someone to jail if they're your friend, I think. I haven't had to take any friends to jail, so. But
That's good. We're playing basketball the other day, and I met a guy at the dog park, and he invited me to go play basketball with him. And so I invited one of my friends. I asked if I could invite a friend, and we're starting to play. And my friend and I walked around and introduced ourselves, and fist pumped everybody. It was a new group, so we were being super friendly. And one guy in particular, I could tell for some reason didn't like off the bat I was a threat or something. He didn't like introduce himself. He was like, we ended up kind of like guarding each other, and I could just feel the energy,
Yeah.
But it was a friendly game. Everybody was being cool. In the middle of the game, he tried to take a charge in the middle of the court, which if you know about basketball, is a weird place to take a charge. It's not.
Not
In the
by
key,
yeah.
it's not to make a play. And I passed the ball, and he stood like this, and my momentum kind of took me into him. And he got up and he was like, whoa, just huffing and puffing, and some bad work came out. And I was in a place that already told myself that I'm with a new group. I'm going to make friends. I'm here to make friends. I'm here to have fun. And there was nothing about that fazed me, My mentality was right, It was easy for me to be like, yo, like, my bad. I apologize.
Yeah.
Whoa, what if you... No, it's my bad. And I even said, I said 3 or 4 times, and he was still around, and I said, how many more times do I gotta tell you that's my fault? Like, can we move forward?
Yeah.
And even his friends were like, he's having a day, And then later in the end, he came to me, he's like, I thought you did it on purpose, blah, blah. It's like, I know you did, but I didn't, and that's what we're good, right?
Yeah.
And he, at the end of the game, we appreciate it. But it was that kind of, I don't always live there in that space.
It's a crossroads, right?
Yeah.
That was the crossroads for
Because I'm
you.
him sometimes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, which way am I going to turn here, right? Because I
Right.
can turn into,
But the love or the attitude diffused it, and the anger was completely out of me. And typically, if I was probably with a group of friends that I know and felt safe, and my chest would be puffed up, and I did some push-ups right before, I'd have felt a certain way. But that day, I was like in pure like submission to enjoying myself and meeting new friends. And he was the one that needed the reconciliation, So I was like.
And so, I mean, and that's like again a micro example of what happens on so many levels.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because it could have turned to blows, right? If you would have responded in the wrong way, if you would have taken offense, and even though you didn't do it on purpose, and this guy's already got a chip on his shoulder, and and you start responding to these things that in this kind of anger, it's going to lead to something else, right? And so you having a different mindset, this kind of understanding of what anger can do allowed you to,
Yeah, that's that part. Understanding what the anger could do, the capabilities. Like this is part of this is like if you like are training a pit bull, the capabilities of the pit bull. It's the capabilities that make the pit bull dangerous. If you understand anger could turn into murder, you should take way more caution when becoming angry because of the capabilities of the anger. Like, I don't think I could get to the point where I could kill somebody. There was a show on Netflix. Did you see that show where try to get somebody to be okay killing somebody.
Yeah,
It was like a
where
hidden
they,
show,
yeah,
hidden camera show.
yeah. I always wondered if that was real or not, but
I felt
yeah.
very real, and it wasn't like he took a knife and stabbed the guy. It was like just like I forgot what it was, but he made it so he pushed him over
Over
the
the
edge
building,
over the
yeah.
building, and there was one guy, one contestant that actually did it, and it was like when you're protecting yourself so much, your ego so much, you could get to the point where you can
Yeah, he
do
would
it.
actually
That was
do
a
that.
that was a tough show.
Yeah,
I gotta remember the name of that show. Did you see that show? It was weird.
yeah. It was weird. It was
Yeah, it
weird.
was weird. Yeah,
It was weird, like all along the line, because you start knowing what's happening, right? You know what they're
their
leading
plan
to,
is
yeah. And then it's like, oh man, that's the wrong decision. That's the wrong decision, right? You keep seeing
If you could make
him
this,
give
the
in.
person make the wrong decision over and over again,
Yeah,
then
pretty
you
soon
could.
they're like stuck in it.
Yeah, they're
Yeah.
stuck in it. Wow, dude, that might be a thing to explore. Yeah.
I mean, really, you could see this leading to that, right? This is where anger can go to.
Yeah.
So, any takeaways on what we said? Again, if you have any questions, you can write them down or let us know. Kirk, you have any questions?
Not really. You guys answered most of mine. It was a pretty good message on Sunday.
Yeah, I liked it.
I was going to add one other thing. Anger leads to suffering. And it can lead to undue suffering.
Anger leads to suffering.
Get angry
Yeah.
and this is
I don't even think about those things. Like Jesus just talked about the repercussions. He didn't talk about like the symptoms. You know, like
Yeah.
those are real. Like they do lead to suffering. You know,
Yeah.
or maybe he did. Maybe that's what hell is. You're creating your own hell. You know, like
Yeah. I mean, again,
I don't want to get into that though.
yeah.
Stop me. Yeah,
You
but
said on Sunday about making friends with people, diffusing the situation by making friends with a person, making peace before it becomes something worse.
yeah.
That was something that really resonated with me.
That's cool. Kirk just said making friends something before something turns bad really resonated with him, and so yeah, it resonated with me too, and just especially the times when I don't. It's like, oh wow, but
Yeah, because everybody did something that they shouldn't have to somebody, and out of anger, when you look back and you're like,
yeah.
like it's gonna be hard to fix that one, you know, or
Yeah.
I shouldn't have done that, you know, and or yeah, out of character.
Yeah, and the words, right? When you say these things, like Jesus says, if you say this, how many times have I said something, to people, gosh, people at work, my family, my wife, my kids, that you regret. And so, Jason, fighting real hard not to respond in anger to the situation he's in right now. I feel you, Jason. I feel you. And we're going to be praying for you in this situation, man. And I hope this can help you through it. I hope this can help you to do what is good, not only for the situation, but for you. It's a tough one, man. I know where you're at right now, and this is exactly the kind of thing that I hope will help you.
And anger, I don't know, Jason, if you watched the whole thing, but me and Sam were talking about how anger is going to exist and anger it will be there, but your response is the catalyst to turning that anger into something not unuseful, so like sitting in the anger and thinking about how you could respond in love and what that would look like in your particular situation. And I don't have any insight, but we are praying for you.
Yeah, you can be angry about the situation, but don't let it take you to a place that's not healthy. You're welcome, man. Love you, Jason. And I know there's a lot of people with situations that are difficult, at work, maybe even in your home. I can't answer what you should do in those situations, but I think this is about how you should do it. You should do it in a way that can try to develop reconciliation and healing and life, and in a way that represents the kingdom to some degree. Doesn't mean you bowl over. Doesn't mean you don't, call the cops if you need to, or lawyer up if you need to. But, the attitude that we bring into it is important because it could change everything. Just like this guy Daryl who changed the Ku Klux Klan guy. You know, those things happen. And if we think that it's impossible, gosh, what did I hear today? Take a rock out of, it was from Martin Luther King's speech. Take a rock of hope from the mountain of despair. You can always do that.
Yeah.
So, anyway. That's all I got, man.
That's all I got.
Okay. Thank you guys for joining us online. Of those who will join in later, remember this Friday, paint night. If you are going to be here, it's the 20th, I think, right? I think so. Yeah, today's 18th, so the 20th. So I don't know when you
Yes.
watch it. If you watch this on the 21st, don't come next
It's
Friday.
too late. It's too
Yeah,
late.
You missed it. But the 20th, be here at 7. If you want to join, let us know. You got to message us so we have the supplies for you. And you can do that at the Genesis Story, any place on the Genesis Story or the Common Grounds family Instagram. Yeah, that's it.
Good thing you reminded me. I gotta go check the supplies right now.
Okay,
See
now
if
we
they
got
have-
some back here.
Yeah, I gotta see how many.
Okay. Anyway,
All right.
love you guys. Peace. God bless you guys.
God bless.
Take care of yourselves out there.